Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharavana Raghavan.
Welcome to the 100th episode of CoBB. With all the listeners being there, we have just been recording every week and we have gotten to this milestone. Just to celebrate this milestone, we wanted to do something special. So not only are we doing a live recording in a studio, but we have got some esteemed guests as well. And obviously my co-host Sharavana also. If you can already see him sitting silently there, it is very rare that we are able to keep Sharavana silent for so long. Let me give him some chance to speak before we get into our guests. Over to you, Sharavana.
Welcome to the 100th episode of CoBB. You too, Sudeep.
Thank you.
And for listeners who've been listening and watching us for 99 episodes, I think it's just a reward that they get to hear from other experts and proper experts than us so that we both can sit back and listen today. So, welcome to the show, everybody.
Excellent. So, before we get into specifics of marketing and various other aspects that we want to discuss today, we would first like our guests to introduce themselves to all the listeners. Telling us who they are, what do they do now, how did they get there, and then maybe some of those aspects of their journey we will pick up while we are speaking to them along the show. Okay, so let's start with you, Puru.
Hi, my name is Puru. I represent a brand called True Elements. It's almost an 8-year-old brand. It stands for healthy breakfast and snacks. Essentially, we are a brand that stands for 8, 11, and 5 consumption occasions. And we are a brand that's across online and offline. And yeah, we are trying to sell as many packets of healthy food as possible.
Very nice. Good. Thank you. Welcome to the show,
Thank
Puru.
you so much.
Manas.
Yeah, hi. My name is Manas Madhu. I'm the founder of Beyond Snack Kerala Banana Chips. We are bringing banana chips in organized and branded format. Basically, what Lay's did for potato chips, we are doing the same thing with banana chips. We are pioneering in doing that shift from unorganized to organized for banana chips.
Okay. Welcome to the show, Manas.
Thank you.
Sapna.
Many congratulations to both of you on your 100th episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm Sapna. I lead marketing at Manipal Cigna. It's a health insurance organization. I've been there almost 11 years now. And I've had experience in the BFSI sector. So I worked in life earlier. I've also worked in telecom and in the education space. I've also spent some time in advertising, which is at Ogilvy. So been dealing with a lot of FMCG and a lot of BFSI brands. So look forward to the conversations here with really interesting topics.
Awesome. And the whole idea of putting this panel together, if in case you didn't know what you walked into, is that we wanted the perspective of the whole point of CoBB is to have conversations on the business of brands. And we want to talk to brand builders, entrepreneurs, or from entrepreneur perspective, as well as from a marketing CMO perspective. And that's why we thought we couldn't have anybody better than the three of you with us today.
Correct. What Sharavana has not allowed me to do is to have an empty chair here. I really wanted to have one because I thought that it'll be great to have somebody from the investment side here so that we could capture their perspective on how they look at investing into brands, how Sapna looks at, for example, investment or how they evaluate brands, etc. And we thought that like Jeff Bezos does at Amazon, he always keeps an empty chair in a boardroom to represent the consumer there. Similarly, we wanted to keep an empty chair here so that the investor is represented. And I'm told that an investor being in the room keeps the founders honest. So that would have been my insurance against any kind of overclaim by Puru and Manas. But since Sharavana has not allowed me to have it, I'm just stating it upfront so that both Puru and Manas are mindful of what they're saying.
Already set the boundaries for us.
Yeah, correct. Why don't we dive deeper into some of the work that you guys have done? And we will keep taking turns between Sharan and I to try and ask you a little more, deeper questions about this journey. And we will also take Sapna's point of view on how she looks at brand and how you guys are looking at it. Yeah. So why don't we start with you, Manas? You must have decided to, do this, make banana chips into an organized category, do a Lay's,
Right.
what Lay's has done for potato chips. When you decided it, yeah, I'm sure you would have felt some need. Why did you feel the need to make a brand of it?
To be honest, I did not start with the banana chips as a concept. It actually evolved. That's how I arrived at. So before banana chips, I started with a the first one was a mock meat brand, which which is more into this tasty aspect, no, healthy aspect of the catching up trend.
Mock meat as in with soya with...
No, it's based out of jackfruit.
Is that
Yeah.
why your company is called...
Dr. The
Yeah.
company name is Dr. Jackfruit India Private Limited. So this is more like a company that I envision to have a research in jackfruit to bring in a lot of healthy products, especially for Western countries where vegan as a trend was catching up at that time.
And you had no FMCG background, right?
No, absolutely no.
What gave you the confidence or the
So
guts to do this?
I always wanted to start something on my own. That even the entrepreneurship as a word also was not really that fancy thing in 2017-18 in Kerala around, and I wanted to start some business. I was exploring what are the potential opportunities, and I came across a series of articles about value addition of fruits and vegetables as a business opportunity. So that really got me into this, and I was working at that time.
Right.
So then I started exploring that. I started reaching out to people who are directly, indirectly connected to food. And then, I worked towards this concept of mock meat through jackfruit.
Okay.
It created some excitement when we presented it to someone, but that excitement never really converted into sales or revenue, right?
Yeah.
So that's when.
So you made the mock meat. The product was done.
Yeah, the product.
Oh, wow.
Also, yeah.
Okay.
So I started taking it to the trade shows. I presented to the people. But yeah, the end of the day, that excitement was never. It was
difficult
always
to
as an
please Keralites with any kind of...
not just Kerala.
Yeah.
Not any kind of meat, and especially this is mock meat. So I did not try that.
Okay.
I took it to Bombay. I took it to wherever the export opportunities are there. Those type of trade shows. But then, the excitement was, like I said, it was never really converted it into revenue. Then I started rethinking it. So coincidentally, at that time, I was going for a trade show, and I was carrying this, the product. And I was before entering into this airport, we usually try to save money, and then we have lunch outside. So while I was paying, I saw a stack of chips, especially jackfruit chips. Since I was working in jackfruit chips, I thought I'll buy that product. So the product was really bad, but I am a big fan of jackfruit chips. That got me into thinking that, okay, why nobody has tried anything in jackfruit? That got me into thinking that, okay, banana is such a bigger market than banana also nobody has tried something.
Right.
And potato chips has so much of exciting offerings, like, the flavored ones and the different formats. So that really, so I remember that trade show, that though I was physically present there, but my mind was fully wandering on like how we can
You'd moved on from you'd moved from jackfruit to banana by then.
So the moment I came back, that trade show was in Mumbai. The moment I came back to Kerala, I already made out some plans. Like, I started visiting factories who have already done this, and I started going and meeting people who have tried this. One thing I realized is that it is not that nobody has tried it, but people have failed because most of the time people think that, okay, they can put a normal banana chips which is out there in the market in a nice presentable packet and brand it and sell it, it will sell. But that was not really the case, because people don't feel any value add just because of the packaging is good, but the product was still the same. And the fundamental problems of banana chips was most of the time the consistency of the product was never achieved because there was no standardization in that. So sometimes it is soggy, sometimes it is hard. If you're lucky, you will get a great product like that.
Right.
So I realized that solving that thing is the first step towards launching a good brand. So then from then onwards, my pursuit was to crack that. I got in touch with a couple of my friends who was in Leher and Kurkure at that point of time, and he advised me to identify a good food scientist. We did. So together we started working towards banana chip standardization, identifying the right raw material to the right the thick slice. The slice thickness, and then the temperature of cooking, the time period for which the cooking has to happen, and then the seasoning application. One by one, we started cracking it, and we got a good
Nice.
product. Then that is one. So at that point of time, also coming back to your question that you were asking, when do you think the need of a brand, right? So I wanted to launch a brand in the beginning itself but then I a little less confident because of the previous episode also with the mock meat. So what we did is we put it in a see-through packet in the same format. Banana chips you might have seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's predominantly available in a see-through
See-through
packet.
Yeah.
So we put it in a see-through packet, and we put a normal name called snack with a style in A and all, and we started placing it in bakeries and
And where was this? Which
this
city?
was in Kerala. This was in
Kerala.
Kerala because in the nearby shop, we wanted to see that whether the consumers are able to realize the difference in the product itself in the same even if we are presenting it in the same format.
Nice.
So what worked is that we have started getting a good response from the bakeries and all. We started placing.
So this is like the blind testing, blind product testing that
blind
you do.
product testing.
Unbranded product testing. Good.
So then there was a trade show again. I don't know, somehow I usually try and test all these things in trade shows. So there was a trade show happening, one of the big trade show in Kerala. So I went there with some 8 boxes. And that day the plan was to sample it and just take the feedback from the consumers. So one of my friend also was there. So he started giving out the samples in loose, and people were taking it, eating it, and I'll be standing some a couple of feet away and then watching it. And when they approach me, I'll ask them that
how did you like it?
Did you like it? Should we continue this? Is there any point in continuing this? And so but then some people started asking that the product is really good, why you are not selling where I can buy? So then I thought, of course, sales is the best feedback. So we started selling. So that day,
in Kerala itself,
in that trade show.
Okay.
So almost by around 3 o'clock itself, we sold that 8 boxes. Then we went back late night, took another 12 boxes, came back next day, that also sold off. Then we sent a truckload from there.
Wow.
So we made around 1.5 lakh rupees in that 4 or 5 days.
Oh, not bad, yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
And that too in the land of Kerala, where people are very critical about banana chips. And
they know banana chips.
authors of
They've-
banana chips.
They've tried different banana chips
It's
anyway.
the PMF at its best.
Yeah. In the core market.
Yes.
Brilliant.
That really gives a confidence to, let's move ahead and invest a little bit money in terms of, the branding and, basically bringing the overall aesthetics of the packaging.
Right.
So
Nice.
that's how then, but the potential of this also at that point of time, these are all came from the market. Like in the potential of this, I realized when we started selling it in the real markets, like online, offline, the real. So we launched it in Jan 2020.
Okay.
Immediately the COVID hit in March. So we during lockdown we started listing the product in Amazon and Flipkarts. But when the lockdown lifted, we got brilliant response, and especially because in banana chips in that category, and that was not at that point of time, I don't know whether we could call it as a category, but still in banana chips as a product, there were no
I think you must have been the only one, no? Others,
no branded banana chips as such was there. So we were ticking a lot of relevant criteria at that time, like for example, no hand touch, the hygienically prepared, better packaging, because after COVID people become more finicky about a lot
Right.
of these aspects, and we were that fortunately that
So
brand
sales picked up
picking
on Amazon after
Amazon and
COVID.
Flipkart. Yeah.
After COVID.
So Jan we launched.
Even when you speak to people in branded snacking category products, all kind of products, biscuits, chocolates, etc., the sales have significantly picked up because COVID prompted the pantry stocking habit.
Right.
And then all the unorganized people vanished, and therefore people moved to branded segments. And when they got the taste of it, etc., the price value equation got set. So almost all companies, branded snacking, have seen significant gains after
Yeah.
COVID.
Even Britannia, I know they said we can't expect the same growth we saw in COVID, so they had to look at other categories because the pantry stocking had gone up.
No,
Is
but
what I
the
remember.
lovely thing about COVID, therefore, in this category is that the penetration got reset completely. So the base penetration that you always talk about, the frequency, the average weight of purchase, etc., all of them got completely reset. So the entire category possibly is now working with very different levels of penetration as well as average weight of consumption. Okay, go ahead, Manas.
When did you change to Beyond Snack?
So earlier the brand was Snack,
Ah,
but at that time itself I had this Beyond Snacks the concept, but I did not wanted to put that. So this is testing anyway. Like, so even if it is small, we tend to think,
the careful risk averse.
Now I realize it doesn't really matter. At
Matter,
that point of
correct.
time. You will be at that point of time. This is life, right? So. But anyway, so when in around I think November December time frame, so October November time frame, we put it in. We got a good design done from an agency, a small agency, and then the product came out in Jan 2020. And the initial plan was, of course, focus on GT FMCG, because that's where the so I decided to shift to Bangalore. Because we are charging a premium, of course, this is good
Right.
quality, better quality, better version of
You would have been what, 2x of the local market products in Kerala?
Sorry,
The transparent
the
packing.
pricing, not 2x, 1.67x.
Okay.
वो rounded off में उसको 2x ही बोलते हैं. This is the founder in him objecting to 2x. Not 2x, 1.7.
We face a lot of backlash, so habitual to this.
Now, I think with a lot of startups operating with the right kind of credentials, right kind of branding, I think premium is not looked at with the same lens that it was looked at earlier. You don't need to be defensive anymore. So, but 1.6x it is. Let's go with that. Yes.
So the product then I decided to shift to Bangalore, but then before that this COVID hit in March. So I was not giving enough importance to e-commerce at that point of time, because according to my thesis, e-commerce is not going to give that much amount of a volume. Why we have to focus on that? Let's focus on FMCG. But anyway, nothing. After COVID, anyway, all the shops were closed, and nothing to be done, and a lot of
Palpitation. What's happening?
Thinking too
Business.
much. A lot of stock also. What should we do? So we decided to shift to e-commerce, and really that was an eye-opener for us, because the volumes really came. And better volumes for a startup to anticipate, better than what we could have get it from a GT also.
And you have sold multi-packs largely?
Yeah. So at that time, multi-packs, all combo packs.
How many packs would be? What's
pack of 3? Yeah,
pack?
This was that also was it was not a thought out something. We started selling single packet, it was not viable, because the product in average order value concept will hit you immediately. So then we shifted to combo pack. That also actually worked, because people got an opportunity to try all the flavors.
Yes.
So that also worked out well. Somewhere that that luck also to an extent favored, whatever the measures that we were taking also working out well. But then we corrected the pricing also. We started to experiment a little bit with the pricing. We because online we had that the liberty,
the ability to change
the pricing and see that how the volumes
and bring
are
it
coming.
back if it
Yes, and we did that, and we got a confidence in the pricing also from that. So we know that with this pricing the volumes won't get impacted that much. At the same time we'll be able to.
Nice.
So then a lot of experimentation happened, and then online clicked. Then suddenly my respect towards online increased. I started reaching out to all online platforms.
Hail
like
Jeff
Big
Bezos.
Basket. Correct, yeah. Big Basket. At that time it was Grofers. I reached out to all these people. Wherever we placed, good response started coming. That gives so that is when I got a realization that this category is much more bigger than what we anticipated. The more confidence that then the bigger play I started.
Nice.
I had the confidence to go for a bigger play. So that's
I'm picking up 3 big themes from what he has said. So one is this whole thing around learning from failure. Initially jackfruit and mock meat, etc. We will talk a little bit more about this with the rest of the people as well. Second thing is this whole thing around experimentation. How do you build conviction in your final proposition? Let's call it final, because the proposition is never final. You keep working on it.
Correct.
And third is the role of some of these big change events like COVID.
Yes.
Or things like these. Somehow they will change your perspective, change your business model or something else. You never know what will happen to you.
Yeah, correct.
So let's talk a little bit about this as well, because I've seen this having a profound impact on a lot of businesses. We'll pick up on the same things with Puru as well. Okay, so all of this led you to say that the opportunity is big.
Yeah.
Category can become bigger.
And that time I started getting a much more clarity on where we should go. Basically, the vision also getting much more clear, because I decided that, okay, we need to put in more time in instead of getting into multiple things, just focus more on this category itself and make this as a standalone category, because banana chips was always considered as a part of a subcategory or a of a namkeen as a whole, right?
Yeah.
But then there is a big opportunity to play, because if you start building a category, then it is much more bigger play. A lot of other economic forces also come in aid to build a category, and the growth can eventually happen by category growth itself.
I think that's a fantastic point, because a lot of the namkeen brands which may have banana chips in their portfolio are sold on the namkeen platform. The proposition is primarily namkeen, not necessarily.
So it's a variety.
This is the core.
Yeah,
I think it's
Good.
a
Excellent.
fantastic point.
So that's that clarity also started getting. Then the journey also become a little more easy in terms of investing, where to invest, what to do, and all those aspects.
Okay.
So therefore, Manas spoke about category, his renewed belief in the category, the fact that the brand and the category can become bigger, and his whole realization that the category can be invested into and taken in this direction.
Yeah.
And hence you've decided to stick to banana chips as of now.
Correct.
No jackfruit.
No jackfruit.
Only in the name.
Yeah, in fact, I'll tell you one more incident. If
please.
I'll just tell you. So basically, I had that parental love towards the jackfruit chips also. By the way, we created a jackfruit chips also, but it was not giving a good consistency in terms of the output product. But still, I was keeping it. So one of the incident that happened is, then I visited 100x office for investment. I needed money, so in that I put jackfruit chips also. Then Sanjay is a no nonsense type of person. He will be sitting in the couch like this, and why you need that? So I said, jackfruit chips, new thing. Why? Something is already working. So then, you wanted to waste your time on this also. Then I somehow it got into my brain. Then I started thinking. I realized that, okay, there is much more bigger opportunity with this. It will only dilute my focus.
Yeah.
So then one thing led to another, and then I stick to banana chips, and the more I stick to banana chips, the more confidence I gain in category.
Very good. Excellent. I think that is lovely realization as well.
So
okay, excellent.
Manas has an excuse, right? He's not from FMCG. He jumped in.
Correct.
So Puru is from FMCG, and you still had the confidence to start an FMCG brand, almost in a category where an MNC has been struggling to penetrate in India for the last 25-30 years. What's your story behind that, Puru?
So I think I have one common thing with Manas. Rest everything is very opposite. So it didn't start with the way Manas said. It did not start with it. Obviously, the objective was to start a food brand, a health brand, because again, the genesis of it was largely because we had some personal challenges, and my dad was sick, and I realized that was a realization that maybe there is scope in health. Maybe as Indians, we're not really conscious about our health. So while I was at PNG, one of the biggest things was that, is there a way for us to create consciousness around health before it gets too late? Because most of us end up taking care of health when it gets too late. When we see someone around us falling sick, that's when we start, exercising, being conscious about food. That was a starting point. Obviously, this was way back in 2010-11. There was a separate inspiration from China where, when I had gone, I saw everybody with a cup in their hand with green tea being sipped. So I said, okay, there is some currency there. But coming from PNG, the learning I had was distribution. I said, okay, if you want to build a brand, and you realize that when you're an FMCG, it's not a single role. I was largely in the GTM part of the shopper marketing part of PNG. And the sad part about most of these legacy brands, in my understanding, is that people who work, they feel that they are the ones who are anchoring the brand. They forget the 150, 160 years of legacy behind it. So when I was handling Gillette, for instance, I thought, okay, if I can do X thousand crores on my own brand, few hundreds is very easy, right? It's largely built on distribution. So that's how I started. I started as a distributor of brands rather than reinventing the wheel. I said, okay, let me pick up the health foods brands that are good. Can I create a go-to-market for them? Can I create awareness around them? Can I take them to stores? Can I take them online? This was way back in 2011.
This was because of your GTM,
GTM understanding, because I had handled distributors, I had handled business. I said, okay, why I can just be a distributor myself. I made a good business plan. So when you create a top line, so for instance, my month one top line as per my number was around 35 lakhs. I said, okay, and I am from Delhi, so I started distribution in Delhi because I knew the stores, I knew everything. And I said, okay, corresponding to that, I'll incur spends as well. So I had around 4-5 lakhs of spends with people. And when it came to execution, my month one number was around 16,500 rupees in top line. So that's when reality struck me. I said, okay, something is missing. I think I'm missing some piece somewhere. So that's where it started. Idea was to be in the health food space. We started distribution, and then obviously it was a journey of some 5-6 years where we moved from one to the other. I keep joking about the fact that I can practically work as a VC in health foods because I've practically done every business model possible in this space and failed on each of them. So I know what will not work. I still don't know what will work in those places, but what will not work, I know. So that's how we started. True Elements came in from a need to private label the brands that we're doing. So we started, one of the scalable opportunities we had was running as an e-commerce firm, where at peak we were handling some 5,000 odd SKUs, some 350 brands. And that time HealthCart had not come in. That time none of these brands were there. So they had not scaled up. So we were handling food as e-com plus distributors.
And you were distributing international brands, local brands?
So local, a lot of. So for instance, one of the first brands I did was Nature Valley, because the same guy who was selling Atta, Pillsbury Atta, was also selling Nature Valley.
Okay.
Then there were snack items, roasty tasty, lot of Manas competitors of Manas. So I used to create distribution for them. So that's how it started. Eventually we realized that and there was a lot of demand creation piece required, and that demand creation is what we started along with GTM, doing activations in societies, creating alternate channels like gyms, dietitians. But what we realized that while we were doing all that, Borges was one of the brands that we picked up. So while we were doing this whole customer education piece, we realized that the acquisition was not happening for us. It was for the brands.
Yeah.
So we were building demand for the brands, and brands had their own GTM. So for instance, a customer would walk into our kiosk, learn about Borges, different types of olive oil, but eventually go and buy DMart the second time. So that was not really scalable from a profitability standpoint, and we started burning a lot of money. So that's where we said, okay, how do we get the customer sticky to us? And that's where private label came in. So we went to all our 350 odd guys. We said, okay, can you private label for us? Can you make us under our own label? So people who were agnostic to the brand said, I don't care. As long as you give me numbers, I'm okay. So that's how we sourced products. So that's how True Elements was born. True Elements was born as a private label to our e-commerce website, which was healthyworld.in. That was the first venture.
When you say e-commerce, you had your own platform. You were not just selling on Amazon.
No, so Amazon did not come in. Amazon came in 2014.
Right.
So 2013, 14. This is way back in 2012. So 1 year had passed, and then that's how we sort of picked up. So the starting was not one. The starting was too many products together, right? So that's how. So just for reference, like Manas said, I started a category, I stuck to one. So when we used to go to VC, they said we are just in 10 categories. So there were all the 10 categories.
Just and 10.
We are
Just
focused
in
in 10 categories. So then 2 years later, we said now we are much sharper. We are only in 5 categories. So that's how it, for us, that was letting go a product was a big deal for us.
Yeah,
even today, that's a challenge, to be honest. So we came from there. The whole promise was, okay, private label became in, then Amazon came in. And we suddenly saw traction in True Elements. So the first few products we had was spearmint tea, muesli was one of them, apple cider vinegar, all these products which people who are health conscious were buying, but under the True Elements label. So that's how it started. And then Amazon came in, and suddenly we scaled up massively, quickly. That's where he said, okay, let's invert the pendulum. Instead of True Elements being the private label of a website, True Elements will be the brand, the front force of us, and Healthy World will be one of the channels. And that's how True Elements started picking up across channels. From there on, it was largely the focus of True Elements. That's how the whole brand came in. Again, as a brand, we were conscious. The other thing that Manas mentioned is quick com or e-com became his, he had respect. We started because when you're running your own website, building each and every product listing, SEO, SEM, all those things came in for us as part of running a website. So practically, what the world calls DTC today, we were sort of running that, and that gave us a good digital orientation. So while I was at P&G, where e-commerce was virtually absent till 2011, till when I quit, we had this learning curve. So we started digitally. So we've been selling on Amazon for now 12 years. So that learning curve became our strength. And hence, when COVID hit, unlike Manas, online was our strength, and that
Yeah.
gave us the benefit because immediately customers switched from offline to online,
And you were ready.
and we were ready. None of the bigger guys like Kellogg's, Quaker, none of them were
Exactly. Even large guys would not have had competence
they
to
did
sell
not
on
have
e-com.
competence, and that gave us a good traction, immediate traction, where people could switch and then move on. Again, it was just a matter of time, to be honest. Others caught up, but yeah, then that's how the
Your
So
question.
I have a question. So in 2012, that is even before Amazon, so were people really ordering? They had the confidence to order from, from this from the
So-
website.
You're right. See, for us, the benchmarks of scale were very different, right? So we were doing what? That time we were doing some 20 lakhs a month. For us, we were like, that was also a big scale. But had we continued it, I don't think we would have crossed 1 or 2 CR a month. Because that scale, because that's a limited TAM, right? Limited set of customers. It's just that for every customer who was ordering, we were very sure. So they were far and few. That's why it was e-commerce more than physical stores. People did not know. So incidentally, I keep, and between Shijit and me, we keep joking that we have always identified opportunities 2 years in advance before the opportunity becomes big, and then we leave it just before the opportunity becomes big. So when we used to source apple cider vinegar, that guy we were scaling, we were not really, and they said, no, I think this is not really scaling up. And the moment we stopped the vendor, the same guy is one of the suppliers to one of the biggest brands today, and he's like very happy. He's like got 4-5 cars now. Like, okay. Same guy. So,
You were good luck for him.
yeah, good luck.
Let's see it
I
positive.
would not like to continue being like that.
So what's the next one you should tell us? Those are pehle.
Correct. So therefore, what Manas asked, so therefore you're saying that there were enough people to clock that revenue, and it's your early adopters who were there.
Yeah.
The 20 lakh you mentioned is coming from that website.
Website. Yes.
Wow, that
No,
20 lakh
good
is-
number, yeah.
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So our average ticket size used to be roughly around 1100, 1000 to 1100.
Wow.
Ah,
So for us, it was largely, so our source of draw was a lot to do with Google Ads. We were not in social media as such. Social media was also not that big
not
that
that
time.
big, yeah.
Google Ads is what we were sort of building up. SEO, in fact, less Google, more SEO. We were so focused on SEO.
More content.
Saying, and that time SEO was still one of the bigger things. Rather than today, it's obviously now you can gamify it. But that time it was hardcore content. The algorithms were far more democratic. So now I think that's where we got an advantage. That's where we used to look at SERPs by day. What's the rank of this particular page by day? That
Wow.
level of diligence we had. So that gave us a learning curve around.
Actually, I have a question for both of you, if you can just interrupt. So for you, the market when you started, was it like the metro or across India, or was it, so where did your first business come from? And now how is it? Has it expanded now? Has it gone beyond?
मानस
the
का तो
top
ट्रेड शो
cities.
में से आया था.
हाँ, वो तो है. अभी कहाँ से आ रहा है?
Metros and tier 1. So that is
Metro,
where-
tier one?
even, yeah.
And what
even
about the tier
online,
2, tier
offline.
3, those places now?
Our focus, so depending after a point of time, where you are investing money is depending on where the revenue is going to come from. So
Mm.
we never consciously try to invest money in tier 2, tier 3 because we believe that slight premiumization also happens with the
1.6.
product. Haan,
1.6x, yes.
is there. So
Metro.
yeah, metro and tier 1 there, if you wanted to move away from metro and tier 1, then there is a value conscious consumers, then
Right.
we need to come out with a product that that
Appeals
appeals
to
to them. So those things are we are yet to crack that. But yeah, I mean that is the reason.
Okay.
For us, it was the opposite. For us, actually, when we started, the benefit that we got was that, let's say we had a lot of imported brands. Let's say product like prune juice, which is usually recommended if you have, tummy issues. So the GTM actually gave us benefit because most of the importers, most of the FMCG companies had good tier 1 distribution.
Yeah.
They did not have tier 2. So that gave us an advantage. Somebody from Asansol, somebody from Guntur, they would say, oh, wow, these products are now available to me as well. The accessibility became our learning curve where
Wow.
suddenly
Wow.
people could place an order, get it in 5-6 days, and they were happy that, okay, the people would buy 12 pieces and suddenly
Oh,
That's
So
why
you
the
had-
ticket value.
that's where the
Ticket
ticket helped because they were ready. Somebody in Delhi would probably still go to a D-Mart. Somebody would go to a Spencer's or a Le Marché. But for us, that became a big benefit and that then converted subsequently. Even today, as a brand, when we are present, and I'm sure Manas would also agree, the competition is far more aggressive in tier 1.
Correct.
In tier 2, as you build your strength, it's a misnomer that people don't have awareness. I think the accessibility to information, misinformation as well,
democratized.
is much higher in tier 2. And as long as you can supplement that with a good GTM, I think you have a market at hand. That I think
Yeah,
is
completely agree. In fact,
Great
many
idea.
of the fashion guys
Yeah.
also say the same thing.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Accessibility
seeing a
to
lot of
fashion.
expansion in tier 2, tier 3. So I was very curious to know how is it, in terms of the business, because I feel that there's a different strata. So it's not just geography. There are the same cohort of people across all the three geographies.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then for them, if you give them that access through various platforms, you're able to reach.
Absolutely.
And I think that other point also is very true about the competition, and the focus. So if you're focusing all year, there's another big opportunity to kind of get to them. But the
Yeah.
GTM becomes very important.
GTM becomes important.
I was in fact about to ask you, Sapna. Now, in your current category, you've been with insurance for quite some time. Now, insurance is a very interesting product. You don't get anything, you just get an insurance, and that too an
Yeah, sure.
hypothetical one, right? Which will come true when you're no longer there.
Yes,
So,
Are
it's
you
a-
complimenting or?
it's the category. It's none of her fault. It's a difficult category. It's a difficult one. You're buying something that you will never get till you're alive, right? So therefore,
for some kind of insurance, yes, but
yes.
for others, no. Yeah.
So life insurance, for example. So I was just wanting to ask you that for something like this, which is more like a selling an assurance or a promise or a concept, their journey has been around realizing there is this category which can be made big, etc. Insurance has always been a category which is tremendously underpenetrated in India, right? And so from your perspective, how have you seen the penetration going? Is it cut by demographics, by tier 1, tier 2, etc., or you've seen something else, some other realization? Has there been any change pre-COVID, post-COVID? Every factor that they spoke about, I'm sure, is true in your industry as well.
Yeah, from a different perspective, but yeah, that's been a milestone event. Okay, so I think in terms of insurance, like I spent some time earlier in life and now in health. So those two categories have worked very
Sure,
closely.
let's talk about these two. Yeah.
Yeah, so life, I mean, the way it was really so India, if I come from a cultural point of view, we know how to save money. So we are a nation of savers. We know how to keep some money away. We know how to save. We've learned how to invest, mutual funds and so on. But paying for a risk product, that means I'm going to pay away this premium and I don't even know if I will ever get it back.
Yeah.
So the whole concept of keeping money away for an eventuality, for a risk, is a very difficult concept to sell. So if you see how the life insurance category moved, there was always this funda of, so term life is the purest form of insurance. That means I'll pay you the money after you're no longer there, right?
Correct.
It's actually a money that you're going to get when you're dead,
Yeah.
which your family is going to get.
Yes.
But that's the purpose of that corpus that you're building, and that's the promise that an insurance company makes to you. Again, there was I would say 10, 12, 15 years back, very difficult concept to sell. Now I would say evolved audiences know that that's the purest form of insurance, and a lot of us in our portfolios will definitely have a term cover. However, if I would take you back 10, 15 years back, people were selling more things like child insurance plan, so building for your child's education through insurance.
Yeah.
That's like, and then selling the ULIP
Yeah.
plans, unit link plans.
Yes.
Again, selling insurance from the concept of investment
Yeah.
and growth,
Yeah.
because risk was difficult to
Sell.
sell. So you sell it like, if you need this money and you're at this particular milestone, you'll get this growth rate, you'll get that corpus that you're building. So like your retirement fund, a child's education, marriage, and we did all of that. So we created all those categories, because earlier when LIC was selling, they had things like endowment plan, they had term plan, they had whole life plans. So they were sold by the fundamental principles of insurance. What we started doing was sell the same concept as a child education plan, like a retirement plan, like a goal-based plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that was a big shift, and that's how you started getting more people into insurance, into buying the concept of insurance. And then I think after the whole ULIP crisis happened, when a lot of people put money and there was some kind of mis-selling, because you would always sell it like this is potential growth, so you'll have 3 different levels of growth, and and you're always selling insurance to an intermediary. So again, in this concept, you have a lot of your distribution is through third parties.
Yes.
So you're having your own advisor, you're selling through your bank assurance challenge, you're selling through brokers. Now I'm seeing a lot of D2C, and that's It's a good movement again, but a lot of the sales is done. So you have the manufacturer, which is the insurance company. You have a distribution, and then you have the end consumer. So a lot of what you kind of work with distribution is how the distribution takes it to the end consumer.
Correct.
So, it's like a tiered approach. And in health, there's another one, which is the hospitals that come into play.
Yeah.
So, which is...
So they replace the distributor in a
No,
lot of
you
cases.
have the distributor also, but your delivery is happening in a hospital.
In a hospital, correct. Yeah.
In a life insurance play, you don't have the... you're not taking care of the eventuality of health emergency.
Sure.
So I would say in terms of, bringing back this journey a little crisper. So I think people are gradually understanding the concept of risk. And I think COVID has been a biggest trigger, of people, because earlier, a lot of research we would do. I'm coming back now maybe to health. People will say, my father is so healthy at this age. Even I am healthy. So, I'm not going to fall sick. So somebody else will fall sick, but I'm not going to fall sick. Mujhe zarurat nahi hai and all that stuff. So I think now what COVID made people realize is that everybody, however healthy they are, can be hospitalized, and an entire family together can be hospitalized.
Mm.
So suddenly you had, claims and, expense hitting you together, and you could see it around you. So I think that thing of I'm infallible, nothing will happen to me, when it happens, I will see, that kind of got a little addressed. So I think, but the challenge is we still have a very short-term memory. So if you see Google search at that time, that period, it spiked up and everybody was interested
Yeah.
and so on. But again, the numbers are
Falling down.
tapering. But it still is an event that you can talk about, instead of saying the what if event, it's like, what if something happens in the future? It's like, what if something like COVID happens? So I think that's definitely been a mindset shift. In terms of, understanding that I should put this money away for an eventuality that might happen. So the pooling of risk concept, but it's slow and gradual. Obviously, because I guess in your day to day, nobody wakes up in the morning and, thinking like, might think, okay, I need to go buy Kerala chips. Or, I want to buy that healthy food. I don't know how many people wake up in the morning thinking today I should, close my health insurance policy, or I should go and explore and buy a life term. So you have to, and also it's not as easy, right? I think there are there's a lot of details in the products. The products are complicated. I mean, for a person, so you have to study a lot. And then in that, there's a whole avoidance principle that I don't have to do it till I have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you kind of stretch that, you procrastinate. Also, you end up, sometimes not getting your hands dirty, or you trust a middle person. कि अच्छा जो agent बताएगा मैं से I will take it.
Correct.
So I think again the onus is a lot on insurance companies, that how do we simplify, how do we make it more accessible, how do we communicate this better to the end consumer, and I think there's a lot of that work that's happening now in the sector in the
So, for
last 2
example,
years.
when Puru and Manas spoke about, they said that they started off doing something else, over a period of time realized where possibly the truer calling of their brands, companies, etc. is, and that seems to be a big opportunity to invest in. Now, for a product like insurance, since the product is technical, even if, for example, you don't get initial success, there'll be a lot other factors that you could blame about distribution, misrepresentation, etc., rather than looking at the product itself.
Mhm.
Right?
Many
Does that happen regularly? Do you face these challenges when you're scaling a new product or a new offering, etc., in the market?
See, incidentally, both the brands that I worked with, I've joined at day zero.
Ah,
So ING was a company that
so you can
we
be blamed for
launched.
the problems.
Yeah. And so was this place, Manipal, was a JV that we launched. So both of them have been, so I've seen the growth and the scale up for both these organs, right from deciding, the logo and stuff like that. So I think what happens is that I think when you launch, sometimes you launch, with a lot of ideas and a lot of, focus and innovation, for example, like the differentiation, because that's what you're focusing on.
Yeah.
How do I get my product different in the market? What do you do? What do you do? Sometimes when you go down the line, a lot of regulations creep in, a lot of can do, cannot do, start creeping in, and then you end up starting into that Me Too space.
Correct.
Because or the cost, like I remember, in Cigna when we started, we had this really nice differentiated, from a marketing point of view, of course, a kit, policy kit, box open, unbox insurance and so on.
Unboxing
Nice.
insurance. I
like
like
a
it.
lot
I
of,
like it.
but then, you did that for some time. It created a lot of buzz. But then when you get into the P&L and the cost of,
The cost
Yeah.
of the box to
cost
unbox.
of the box to unbox.
That's when CFO hits you.
That's what CFO hits you. So yeah, I mean, those are things that start happening.
Yeah.
I think it's like how committed you can be and how strongly you can say that there's the connection and the attribution of all that to future sales.
Sure.
And some of those ideas have lived because, you would show commitment at that stage. And some of them let go because you're like, हाँ, ठीक है.
Not enough commitment.
Not
or
enough commitment. But
Not enough
yeah,
use cases.
not enough use cases.
Or maybe like-
and persistence.
Maybe,
Because
yeah.
I think that's another one. Like, I think if you have a belief, like, the persistence,
Or
which
maybe
is
like Manas said that they were trying out many price points.
Correct.
Finally, they realized that this is the kind of premium I can justifiably charge
correct.
and thereby keep the P&L healthy while selling it.
Correct, absolutely. Or a different consumer segment. Yeah,
Different
like
consumer
cohorts. Yeah,
So you find a different PMF, etc.
correct.
And if you
Correct.
get some cohort, then you can possibly keep selling it.
Yes, yes. So I think that is now, I would say there's a lot more innovation that I'm seeing right now and much more faster in insurance than, in the early phases. Also, the regulator and the regulation is very important in this sector. And with
Yeah,
the whole
truly.
insurance for all and focus on that, a lot of simplification has happened. And that will allow a lot of GTM to be faster, more agile, more ideas that you have on the drawing board to actually come alive and go down the entire funnel.
Sure.
Because the thing with a service brand, what you create is what the delivery on ground is like you have to go through the entire funnel.
Yeah.
So right from, the product design, how do you kind of name the features, so on and so on, which of course we are all aware of, to how your call center representative is actually selling
Correct.
that product, to
Correct.
how an advisor in Jabalpur is selling the product.
Correct.
So that whole pitch has to be standardized and consistent
Correct.
for you to build a brand, because the brand is really not built
In the
here.
boardrooms,
Yeah,
yes.
it's built in that
At the
conversation
floor, yeah.
or when the customer goes to the hospital to get the claim. So that's when the brand is really built.
Hmm.
So I think that whole chain is how do you tie the different elements together is like the holy grail, I think.
No, I think the struggle at the distribution channel is live. I'm sure both of them see it day in, day out on e-commerce as well as traditional trade. It's
Correct.
just more than enough brands vying for consumers' attention. Okay.
So there, it was wonderful when you said COVID kind of created validation for health insurance. Is there a way, Sapna, to say when you launch a new insurance product that this is meeting product market requirement, the PMF? How do you gauge that for a service brand that's viable to take off?
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharavana Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net.